The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Breaking news: the rumors surrounding Damian's fate had been spreading through Genoa City like wildfire. Whispers in corridors, hushed voices over cocktails, and cryptic social media posts all painted the same ominous picture: Damian might not survive what was coming. But why? What connection could he possibly have to the dangerous game being played between Aristotle Dumas and the Newman dynasty? At first glance, Damian seemed like an outsider. A power player perhaps, but not one embedded deeply enough to be at risk of elimination. But nothing in this town ever stayed simple for long. Damian's arrival at the train, where Victor had staged one of the most dangerous power plays of his life, was no accident. He had followed a trail, one laced with lies and half-truths, desperate to unearth the truth about his own bloodline, his purpose, his survival. And if Damian was arriving, then one thing was certain: Amy would not be far behind. The woman who had kept herself shrouded in layers of ambiguity and carefully managed silence, now hurtling toward the most explosive revelation of her life. When Amy stepped onto the train platform, her face was drawn, her eyes full of dread. She had never wanted it to come to this. But Amanda was there, so close, so within reach, and Amy could no longer ignore what was inside her. For years, she had watched from afar, knowing the truth, holding back, waiting for the right moment. But time had run out. Dumas' war with the Newmans had triggered a chain reaction, drawing in players who had once stayed in the shadows. And Amy was one of them. Amanda's presence in the dining car had changed the energy of the train. She had always been calm, controlled, surgical in her logic and emotions. But today, her hands trembled. Her voice had a sharpness that unnerved even those who thought they knew her well. There was something boiling under the surface, something raw and unspoken. The way she spoke to Dumas, the way her eyes flicked toward the others on board, it was clear: she was not here as an ally. She was on a quest for something personal, something old, something dark. And then the train door opened, and Amy stepped inside. The room fell into silence. Victor turned. Damian stiffened. Nate blinked in confusion. Amanda rose slowly, a wave of disbelief washing over her face. Amy said nothing at first. She simply walked toward Amanda, her hands shaking. Tears welled in her eyes, and then, without warning, she reached forward and embraced Amanda, holding her tightly. The room watched in stunned silence. And then, in a voice choked with emotion, Amy whispered a single word: daughter. Amanda froze. What did you say? She asked, voice trembling. Amy stepped back, tears falling freely now. You're my daughter. My child. The one they took from me. The one I searched for every day of my life. She fumbled in her bag, pulling out a small envelope. I did the test, she said. I had the DNA result run. And this, she held up an old photograph, faded, grainy, but unmistakably a young Amanda. This was you. The day they took you. I was told you died, but I never believed it. The room exploded into chaos. Damian, stunned, turned toward Nate. Did you know any of this? He demanded. Nate shook his head, equally blindsided. Victor, always calm under pressure, narrowed his eyes, calculating. Was this a ploy? A strategic move? Or something far more volatile? Amanda, meanwhile, stood frozen, her world shattering around her. No, she whispered. That can't be. My parents, my adoptive parents, they told me nothing. Nothing about this. Amy stepped closer. They were paid to keep you. You were given a new name. A new life. And I was told to disappear. Her voice cracked. But I never stopped searching. And now you're here. My daughter. You deserve to know the truth. Amanda's knees buckled, and Nate caught her just in time. She stared at the photo in disbelief. It was her. The same eyes. The same crooked smile. She looked up at Amy. Why now? She asked. Why come forward now, in the middle of this war, this madness? Because you're in danger, Amy said. Because the people you think are your allies are not. Dumas isn't who he says he is. And if you keep following him, you'll be pulled into something you can't come back from. Damian stepped forward now. What does Dumas have to do with you? Amy looked at him, her expression unreadable. He was the one who took you, she said to Amanda. The one who orchestrated everything. He needed leverage. He needed silence. And you were that silence. That's why he's been protecting you all this time. Not because he cares, but because you're the key to everything he's built. Amanda's face hardened. He lied to me? Amy nodded. For years. The betrayal cut deep. Amanda had trusted Dumas. She had followed him into this dangerous game believing they were equals. Now she saw the truth, she had always been a pawn. And somewhere in the back of the car, Victor Newman smiled to himself. Chaos was the perfect climate for control. And this new revelation? It changed the battlefield entirely. Amanda rose slowly, wiping her tears, her voice now steel. If this is true, I want to see everything. The documents. The DNA. All of it. Amy handed her the envelope. It's all here. I've been waiting to give it to you. As Amanda opened it, her hands trembling, the pieces of her life began to fall into place. And somewhere deep inside, the rage started to burn, not just at Dumas, but at everyone who had stolen her past, her identity, and her power. This was no longer about loyalty. It was about truth. And Amanda Sinclair was about to burn everything down to find it. Amanda could barely hold the envelope in her trembling hands as her eyes scanned the DNA results again and again, as if repetition might dull the shock, or perhaps offer a different conclusion. But it was all right there, in clinical, irrefutable language. A 99.999% match. Parent and child. Amy was her biological mother. There was no denying it now. No possibility left for disbelief. And then she looked at the photograph, faded from time but still hauntingly clear, a little girl in a pale blue dress, wide-eyed, standing in front of a swing set. It was her. Not a resemblance. Not a coincidence. It was Amanda. Her childhood. Her truth. Her past, finally crashing through the silence of years. Her tears came suddenly, overwhelming her as if a dam had burst open. She pressed the photo to her chest, sobbing, before slowly lifting her gaze toward Amy. Their eyes met. Mirror images of one another. The same almond shape, the same quiet intelligence. The same guarded sorrow that had clung to both women their entire lives. In that moment, Amanda saw not a stranger, not a mistake from someone else's history, but her mother. Her real mother. The one she had unknowingly searched for in every conversation, every case she fought, every time she wondered who she really was. Amy could no longer contain herself either. The years of hiding, the years of grief, shame, and silent agony finally erupted in a wail that shook the air. "I'm so sorry," she whispered as she fell into Amanda's arms. "I should have never let them take you. I should have fought harder. I should have found you sooner." They clung to each other like two broken halves of a soul finally mending. The other passengers, Victor, Damian, Nate, watched in stunned silence, powerless to interrupt what was clearly a reunion born of destiny and devastation. But even amid the rawness of this moment, a new question burned its way to the surface. Damian. Standing just a few feet away, stunned and silent, his brows drawn in confusion and dawning fear. Amanda turned toward him, her voice still choked but firm. "What about him?" she asked, nodding in Damian's direction. "Is he your son, too?" Amy looked at Damian, her face pale now, the joy in her expression flickering. "Damian," she said softly, but there was hesitation in her tone. A hesitation that turned the room cold. Victor narrowed his eyes. Answer her, he said, voice low but dangerous. Who is he? Amy closed her eyes. He's not my son. A collective breath was held. Amanda blinked. Then who is he? Amy hesitated before answering. He's the son of someone I was tasked to protect. A woman who was murdered. She was involved in something bigger than any of us understood at the time. Damian was barely a year old when I took him in. I raised him in secret. I made him my family because he was my family. Not by blood, but by choice. By love. But he is not biologically mine. Damian staggered backward slightly, as if struck. You're not my mother, he asked, his voice breaking for the first time. No, Amy said gently, stepping forward, but I am the only one who's ever loved you like a son. That's never been a lie. But the foundation beneath Damian had already begun to crumble. He looked from Amy to Amanda, the betrayal sinking deep. All his life, he'd lived with the belief that Amy was his mother. That his place in this world, in her life, had meaning and permanence. Now, with one sentence, it was gone. Amanda looked at him with a new kind of pain. This wasn't just a train ride gone off the rails, this was a reckoning. Then who are you really? She asked Damian softly. And why are you here? Damian didn't answer. His mouth opened, then closed, his face a storm of rage, confusion, and shame. Victor, sensing opportunity in the chaos, took a step forward. So now we know, he said, voice sharp as glass. Amanda, you're Amy's daughter. Damian, you're not her blood. Which begs the question, what's your stake in this war between Dumas and the Newmans? Who sent you? And what have you been hiding from all of us? Damian glared at Victor. You think you can intimidate me, he growled. You think names and bloodlines define everything? Maybe you do. But I know more than any of you realize. And if you think this little reunion changes anything, you're wrong. This war is just beginning. Amanda stepped between them. Enough, she said, her voice suddenly steely again. We're not going to play into his games. We need answers, and we need them now. Amy reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a second envelope. There's more, she whispered. About Damian. About Dumas. And about what happened the night your birth mother died. She handed it to Amanda. You'll understand. But read it alone. No one else can see this yet. Not even him. Amanda took the envelope, now holding both her past and her future in her hands. She looked once more at Amy, the woman who had been a ghost her entire life, and now stood flesh and blood before her. I believe you, she whispered. I believe you're my mother. Amy sobbed again, and Amanda pulled her into another embrace. But even as love bloomed in the wreckage, the seeds of danger grew sharper. Damian turned without a word, leaving the car and disappearing down the narrow corridor of the train, his figure vanishing into shadow. And as Amanda clutched the envelope, a cold realization settled into her bones. This wasn't over. Not even close. For all the chaos that swirled around him. The constant power struggles, the games of dominance orchestrated by his father, and the ghosts of mistakes still lurking in the shadows, Adam Newman found that, in this moment, none of it could compete with the quiet intensity of Chelsea Lawson's gaze. It cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds, softening the edges of the hardened man he had become. The storm had been building for days. Victor's manipulations had once again sent tremors through the foundation of Adam's world, this time targeting the fragile peace he had fought so hard to establish, not only with the Newman family, but more importantly, with Chelsea and their son, Connor. It wasn't just business anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. The line between the professional and the personal had blurred to the point of vanishing. At first, Chelsea had simply been a partner. A sharp mind, a co-conspirator in rebuilding their careers and reputations. But somewhere between the late-night strategy sessions, the whispers exchanged behind closed doors, and the shared frustrations over Victor's suffocating grip on their futures, something deeper had taken root again. A fragile understanding had grown, watered by regret and nurtured by a longing neither of them had dared acknowledge aloud, until now. Chelsea had arrived at Adam's office like a thunderclap. Her eyes had been aflame with suspicion, a betrayal barely masked beneath her breathless demands. "Are you keeping something from me, Adam?" she had asked, her voice cold, brittle. "Did you break your promise? Are you still planning to publish that attack piece on Billy?" He had denied it, of course, vehemently, repeatedly, but the damage had already begun. It wasn't about Billy. It never was. It was about trust. And for two people who had nearly destroyed each other once before, trust was harder to regain than love. Now, as silence blanketed the office and the remnants of that confrontation hung in the air like smoke, Adam reached for her hand, not out of obligation, but out of a quiet desperation to anchor himself to something real. Chelsea didn't resist. She let herself be drawn into his orbit, her heart pounding, her breath unsteady. They weren't sure who moved first, perhaps it didn't matter. But in a blink, lips found lips, and the storm of accusation gave way to something softer, something truer. There was no ceremony to it, no grand declarations. Just the quiet peeling away of barriers, emotional and physical alike, as clothing fell unnoticed to the floor and bodies gravitated toward each other on the plush leather sofa. Their movements weren't frantic but deliberate, as though each touch was an attempt to rewrite the past, to erase the nights spent in separate corners of grief, regret, and resentment. They didn't speak, not at first. Words would have only interrupted the sacred act of reconnection, of surrendering to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they weren't beyond repair. Adam had always been a man defined by control, by the sharp edges of calculated risk. But here, now, wrapped in Chelsea's embrace, he allowed himself to feel, to ache, to breathe, to believe. She touched him like she knew every scar and kissed him like she forgave each one. And he, in turn, held her like she was the last good thing in a world that so often felt like it was crumbling beneath his feet. Time lost meaning. There was only the steady rhythm of breath and heartbeat, the warm friction of skin against skin, and the desperate hope that this union might be the start of something whole. When it was over, they didn't rush to dress or pull away. They stayed there, tangled in each other's limbs, surrounded by quiet and bathed in the dim golden glow of the city lights bleeding through the office window. Chelsea was the first to speak, her voice a whisper against his shoulder. "You think Connor's okay?" she asked, half smiling. "He seemed pretty into that zombie game." Adam chuckled softly, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "He's more than okay. He's thriving. I think he enjoys killing zombies a little too much." Chelsea laughed, the sound ringing with a freedom that had been missing from her voice for weeks. "Takes after you, then," she teased. "Always good in a crisis." He looked at her then, serious again, the mirth in his eyes replaced by a solemn truth. "No," he said gently. "He takes after you. He's resilient, thoughtful, stubborn in the best way. He's going to be just fine. And so are we." Chelsea inhaled slowly, letting the weight of his words settle into her. "Are we?" she asked, not with doubt, but with the tentative hope of someone too often disappointed by promises. "You still believe that?" Adam reached for her hand again, intertwining their fingers. "I believe that we've made mistakes," he said. "Plenty of them. But I also believe we've survived them. And now we have a chance to build something better. Not perfect. Just better. Stronger." She watched him for a moment, as though trying to memorize his expression, to catalogue the sincerity in his eyes. "And what happens when Victor finds out we didn't follow his plan?" she asked. "What happens when he decides we've betrayed him?" Adam didn't flinch. "Then he'll do what Victor always does. He'll test us. Punish us. Try to control us. But I'm done living in fear of him, Chelsea. I'm done choosing between loyalty to my father and loyalty to myself. To us. A long silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with decisions being made, old wounds slowly closing, futures quietly redefined. They lay back against the cushions, their bodies still close, as they stared up at the ceiling as though the answers to all their questions might be written in the shadows above them. It's strange, Chelsea murmured, how something as ridiculous as a video game can make you realize what matters most. What do you mean? She smiled, turning to face him. Watching Connor fight those zombies, he was fearless. Determined. And when he lost, he didn't rage or cry. He just picked up the controller and started over. Like it wasn't failure. Just part of the game. Part of learning. Adam let the words soak in. Maybe we could learn a thing or two from our kid. Maybe we already are, she replied. Maybe that's what this is, starting over. Again. He kissed her temple, a soft promise. This time, we don't let fear write our ending. Outside, Genoa City continued to churn with secrets and betrayals, the ever-turning gears of business and ambition grinding in the background. Victor Newman would no doubt return with demands, with ultimatums, with fury veiled in fatherly disappointment. The media world would remain brutal, alliances would shift, and enemies would lurk in every shadow. But in this quiet pocket of stolen time, Adam and Chelsea had carved out something rare, an imperfect piece born of chaos, a truth that didn't require validation or permission. It wouldn't be easy. It never was. But maybe, just maybe, that was what made it real. And as they lay on the sofa, still unclothed, still vulnerable, they both understood something vital. No matter what storms waited outside that door, whether they came in the form of family, failure, or fallout, they would walk through it together.